want to introduce the folks from Lombik, Benedict and Zoltan. They're instrumental in the community, forging education, forging on the .NET, which we're going to hear about shortly. And also, I just love their enthusiasm. They're constantly jumping in, constantly wanting to do new stuff and pushing new ideas. It'd be, if we had 1,000 of these guys, we would be on fire. But what I love about them is that they're pretty fearless about just asking, jumping in, having an opinion, and getting that feedback loop going. So thank you guys for doing that. It really helps us out quite a bit on a weekly basis if you look at our meetings. So thank you so much, and they've got some exciting stuff to share with you.
Thank you, Ilan. Can you hear me all right? Okay, cool. So some recent events that we have executed recently is the Orchard Spring Harvest Challenge. So this is the second module competition in the history of Orchard. And the first one happened, I don't know, 2 years ago or something like that. Piotr won that, but unfortunately this time he couldn't submit a project because he's in the jury. So sorry about that. So Orchard Spring Harvest Challenge. So first of all, we would like to thank everybody who participated. Well, first of all, in organizing and making Orchard Harvest happen, and of course, making the Spring Harvest Challenge happen, especially Ilan. So he's of course a crucial member of all these events. So let's see the jury. So I'm sorry, it's alphabetical order, but I'm the first on this list. And then we have Bertrand, Nick, Piotr, Sebastian, Sipke, and then my dear friend Zoltan. So the 7 of us have reviewed 6 projects, 6 submissions. And all of them were really great, but unfortunately we have to decide some order and decide who's going to be on which place. So I'd like to start with the 3rd place. The 3rd place project is.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the criteria?
Yeah, of course, criteria. Sorry. So actually we reviewed all of the projects along like 10 to 13 criteria. These were regarding the quality of the code. So we basically did code review, not just functional review. So we did a code review on how well the code is organized, how well it's using Orchard features, how extensible it is, how user-friendly it is, how the UI is usable, and so on. So these were the most crucial criteria to review this project. So the 3rd place goes to the Dynamic Forms project. It was created by Sidebridge Software Private Limited. So it's a great project. Oops. OK. So it goes to the Dynamic Forms project. So I would like to ask for a round of applause for the third place, because it was a really good project. And as the name says, it enables you to create dynamic forms on the admin UI. And the aim is that you don't need to be actually a software developer, a web developer, to be able to create forms, so input material on the interface, on the front end. So this is kind of an introductory experience into Orchard for those who are not actually web developers. We reviewed it. It was great. The code is really good quality, and the module itself is really useful, basically for everyone, even for web developers. This is how the interface looks like. So as you can see, it kind of looks like the workflows module. You are able to add different kind of fields to this area. You can create drop zones for each of these fields. So you just add a bunch of fields, like you could do it for migration, for example. But this is, like I said, not for web developers. And then you can configure them all, and you can publish it, display it on the front end, and then you're going to be able to input data. OK, so 2nd place, it is Matthias Mole. I'm sorry if I pronounce it wrong, but I think it's Matthias Moleya. and it is the inline editing module. This is an awesome feature, so this also deserves a round of applause. So it's something really worthwhile to know about. Inline editing, well, it's a desired feature for Orchard, and it's working great. Save the data beautifully. Actually, one thing we discovered during the review that it basically lacks a bit of extensibility. So it's currently working with a set of content parts, but not all of them. But I'm sure that in the future it's going to be extended, and it will be a great addition to Orchard. And this is how the UI looks like. So basically, what it enables you to, if you click on this button here, you're going to go to the normal editor of this item. But if you click on for example, the body part, it's going to be exchanged. So the normal body part display template is going to be swapped out with the editor template. And then you can edit the data, and then you can hit save. So that's why, so after enabling the editor mode. So it's working great. Like I said, it's a great project. So this is for the second place. And now, the first place. It goes to Daniel Dabrowski for the mini profiler module. So yeah, another round of applause. And what it does actually, it's so the MVC profiler feature is basically ported to Orchard, but it's not just like adding some stuff, some DLLs into an Orchard module. The work of making it possible with Orchard had to do a lot with Orchard services. So here we have Daniel Dabrowski live. We can see him on the
Really?
screen.
That's great. And we can't hear you.
Hello, Daniel.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, we hear you all right. So,
Drag them over. Duplicate the screen or extend.
okay.
Yeah, try.
FN 8. Yeah, and okay. So hopefully we're going to see the screen. Hearing us? Yeah, great. Okay. Okay, so Daniel, this is the venue at Orchard Harvest. This is the audience who are really for your work.
Now I feel much better if I see everyone. No, the say only. Okay, about project. I've created mini profiler about, I don't know, 1 year ago or something, and it was developed for Orchard 105, 6, 7, now for Orchard 108. And its main reason is for just profiling. It measures many things. It measures how good performance is for controllers or for rendering views, and how many SQL queries takes times, and so on. So maybe I will go to the presentation of this tool.
Okay, great. Share your screen, please.
This tool is only a module which makes usable of library, which was created by another team. I only integrated it with Orchard. The base functionality is to measure response. It's a measure of how to say how much time takes a controller to execute its action, and how much takes a result view to be executed. For example, actually for the home page, the controller which displays a page takes 58 milliseconds, and the view result with a layout is rendered in 9 milliseconds.
Daniel,
And that's
please share your screen.
Yes?
Please share your screen. We can't see your screen yet.
Oh my goodness, I forgot about it.
Okay.
And you will have to turn your cam off.
So if they're on GitHub, do you know where on GitHub?
At least some Microsoft advertisement there.
Is that better?
We can't see it yet.
Well, we can try it.
Can you see my screen? Yes?
No?
Or not?
This is what happens on every weekly meeting in our channel. Okay, great.
Finally. Okay. Oh, that's because I'm too nervous. That's why. Okay. One more time. This time, the mini profiler here is displaying how much time takes to render a controller action. Actually, the homepage is rendered in 56 milliseconds and a half. And the view result is executed in 60 milliseconds together with layout.
Are you still with us?
In a view. For example, I have some small examples. In this case, the logic is in controller. So now we can easily see, of course, view result is compiled right now. That it's much bigger than controller. If we refresh it, now we will see that controller takes 100 milliseconds and the view only 8. There are many projects where we got a lot of logic in a view, and like in this scenario, in controller we have no logic, and this takes only even no 1 millisecond, and the view result takes 121. The code is very simple, or the logic is.
You're breaking up a bit. Yeah, we have some problems. Okay.
Oh, it's okay.
We can hear you now.
And here is the logic in the view, where I got it.
Zoltan, cut our video.
And this is the logic in the view. And this is the base functionality. The much more interesting functionality is when we try to make a custom time measure. For example, here, we can define which kind of code in our controller or someone else we would like to measure separately. And for example, here I have two measures in my controller, this one and this one, and the code looks like this. It's just easy to use a mini profiler current step, name it somehow, and the time will be measured because the step is extension ID disposable method. So in those situations, we got two algorithms measured separately. Of course, we can also measure our SQL or any database access. We have to turn it on separately, like here. The meaning profiler has few features which should be turned on separately, just because, for example, we don't want to measure everything. We just would like to focus on, for example, in that situation, on measuring SQL queries. And this time we will try to measure how we get to the database. I've created previously simple blog post with few comments, and this time I would like to render them very easily, and this takes 99 milliseconds. And now we've got two SQL queries. One query was run in controller, as you see here, and another one, it's run in view result. It happens because in controller, I take the all comment parts record, but in the view, I take the list which was lazy loaded and then displayed one by one. That's why Mini Profiler shows us that I've got lazy loaded collection in the view. And of course, from here, we can easily see how this query looks like. And this is those query. And it takes 1.7 milliseconds only. Okay, I've got to...
Thank you, Daniel. That was a great demonstration. We have to go on now.
Okay.
Him again.
Thank you for your participation.
So as a result, Daniel will get a free invitation registration to the next Harvest conference.
Probably also left us.
Yes, yes.
Oh, no.
The voice was missing by the moment. Okay. Thank you very much for watching me and for voting on my module, because I'm very glad. It's a great honor for me to be here with you virtually even.
Great. Thank you again. Okay. Well, as you can see, we really insisted on doing these demos now because we don't have anything to talk about, so it's a little time about .NET. And you can see the screen now, great. Because as you may have heard about it, .NET is an Orchard software as a service, or rather the Orchard software as a service. And now we would like to share with you some of the experiences and techniques we have employed just on a high level, because we don't really have much time for anything else. So generally, what should a software as a service do? Okay, that's just a rhetorical question, so nobody jump in and answer. Well, we think it should work, okay? Unfortunately, it gets a bit more complicated than that, because it shouldn't just work, but it should also work reliably. Because it's a software as a service, you can't affect how it is operated. You just use it, you depend on it, so it should work reliably. It should also work fast. Well, not much to explain here, of course, as fast as possible. It should also work, well, It should do the job. It should provide what its users need. You should get what you expect with a software as a service. And it also should work seamlessly. So you are using a software as a service because you don't want to care about the operation in the background, the system in the background, the server background, anything. You just want to use it, so any upgrade, maintenances, whatnot should happen as seamlessly as possible. So at Lombic, we wanted to get together such a framework. And we are still striving to get together such a framework for our software as a service, .nest. And we created such a framework. It's a technology suite, actually, what we call Lombic Hosting Suite. It's a collection of Orchard modules and also other pieces of software that together aim to provide this, this experience and this background for people who want to host a software as a service on Orchard. Because .nest is an Orchard software as a service where the point is Orchard. So it's not just an Orchard-based software as a service, but rather a service where you can register and you get Orchard tenants because it's a multi-tenant architecture. But the hosting suite is a technology suite that can generally empower such setups and also also Orchard sites hosted in another way. So what have we done to make it reliable? Because we wanted to make it reliable, of course. First of all, we wanted to make .nest, or rather Orchard generally, be able to run on multiple servers so we can scale out. As you may now know, out of the box, Orchard persists a lot of files on the local file system, apart from media, what is pretty well supported to be placed somewhere else. But there are reports persisted on the file system in app data, shell settings, Lucene indices, search indices, also log files, so a lot of files. We have taken all these implementations, overridden them, and now nothing is stored on the local web server. Shell settings are stored in the database. We can also query them very fast, so it doesn't matter how many tenants we have. It's an SQL table, not files. Reports are in the database. The Lucene indices are in blob storage because .nest runs on Azure, actually Azure websites. Lucene indices are in blob storage. Reports are in the database. And to make .nest reliable, we also had to constrain what the tenants can do. Because you don't want other tenants to be able to endanger the whole system and affect other tenants. But out of the box, Orchard's multi-tenancy is pretty good at that. But the main point where you had to intervene is that there are certain modules and features of certain modules, but you can't allow generally for people to use because they can affect other tenants. That's where feature guard, where our service feature guard comes into play, was basically a service for restricting what you can enable or disable among the Orchard features. So for example, let's get to this .nest tenant here. It's running locally, but it's the same on .nest. Oh, sorry. It was already duplicated, but somehow. Yeah, but that was a good site as well, running locally. It is. One feature we can't allow tenants to enable is shape tracing. Because shape tracing is cool and it's a developer tool, but first it can cause a huge memory consumption, and it also enables you to create template files. Now, of course, we can't allow that. And so if you come here and see shape tracing, actually you wouldn't even be able to see shape tracing among the modules on .nest. It's just for the demonstration. And you try to enable it. It will seem like it's enabled, but in reality it isn't. And it not only works for enabling or disabling features on on the module screen, but also from recipes. So, okay, now it's reloading for some reason. But it also works for recipes. So on .NET, we allow you to run recipes freely and even commands in that because it's safe. So as you can see, shape tracing is not enabled because we don't allow that. To get back, and let's see whether we can see it again. Some of the different slides. These are related projects of ours. So some of the projects of the hosting suite are open source. Some of them are closed source. Sorry. We wanted .NET to also work fast, of course. We have one feature to enable a very high density of Orchard tenants, and that is called tenant idle shutdown. On .NET, tenants are only started when the first request hits them. So by default, this is not the case for Orchard. And tenants are also shut down after a period of inactivity to consume resources. So because of this, on .NET and on sites running the hosting suite or running on top of the hosting suite, it doesn't matter how many tenants you have. It only matters how many are running at the same time. We also have quite good client-side performance, so a buy slow score of 98 out of 100. And we also have a caching reverse proxy sitting on before all of the tenants. As Sebastian mentioned in the ASP.NET blog talk, we are also using application request routing. So it's running on IIS in a cloud service. But it's also quite smart because it employs the output cache module as well. So let me show it to you. Okay. If you go, this is an actual live live .NET site. As you can see, it has a page, and it's coming from the cache if you reload it. The local network is actually quite quite funny, but generally it works pretty well. Now, if I go here and modify the page and publish it, the changes are immediately reflected because we have we have an I/output cache storage provider implementation here with the remove and removal methods implemented that actually go to the reverse proxy and evict the cache entries on the reverse proxy there through an API call. But Visual Studio is starting to freeze here. So let's go back. And almost last, we also wanted .NET to work well and and go beyond the constraints of multi-tenancy as well as possible. We have two features enabling, for example, to theme your .NET site, because out of the box you can't install custom themes in a multi-tenant setup, of course. So we wanted to still enable theming, and we have two features to support that. One of these is media theme. A media theme is a theme deployed from some source control or from. Okay, sorry. Let's do it again. Media theme is a theme deployed from some source control, automatically pulled in, and it contains code, but it can contain static assets like JavaScript, CSS, images, and even templates. That's actually how you configure it. Quite easy. But this is not that interesting. Actually, what we have here is a media theme. As you can see, it looks pretty much the same, and it will look pretty much the same if I'm able to open them up. But Visual Studio is working very hard in the background. As you can see, it looks pretty much like a normal theme, but it can't contain Razor code because Razor is basically C#, and we can't allow you to run C# on .NET because it would endanger other tenants. However, you still wanted tenants to be able to use templates, and that's where liquid templating comes into play. Liquid templates are Liquid is a templating language specifically designed to be safe. It was created by Shopify, and it's very flexible, but you can't do just anything in there. Let's see a Liquid template. You see that on the top of the page now, the user shape is looking quite bad. That's because it was overwritten by this Liquid template. This Liquid template here can be created from the admin side, and it can be also created or also put into media themes. So you can basically have Liquid templates in your views folder in your themes. From Liquid templates, you can access the model. You can include style sheets, and you can even include other shapes. So you can. It's very flexible, but still constrained in a way to make it safe. But it enables you to completely style your .NET site. And last but not least, we wanted a seamless experience, of course. That's why we provide automatic maintenances on .NET sites. That means that we can basically run upgrades, data upgrades, configuration changes, anything for all of the tenants automatically. That's what we call maintenances. We have maintenance providers and maintenance batches that we can run either from the admin side or invoked through an API. For example, that's how we can run an upgrade, a data upgrade like an InfoSet migration that was recently introduced. Let's see how such a maintenance looks. And this time I will be very clever and give it a configuration. OK, no, it wasn't needed. Anyway, that's how a maintenance provider looks. As you can see, it's a pretty simple class. It just has a run maintenance method that gets a maintenance context that contains some information about the tenant that is being maintained, because these run maintenance methods run for each of the tenants. Commonly, we include some checks that only run this maintenance if the tenant is running, or if it's disabled, and only run it if the maintenance name is harvest. So this is just a test maintenance here. And by the way, only run it this case if the tenant is called test0. So just one tenant will be affected this time. And this code block is the interesting thing here, because this is running code in the scope of a tenant. This here is running in the scope of the tenant currently affected. So what we do is that we take the site settings and change the site name to harvest. So if I go back, as you can see, our little test site here has the site name test0. So we will change that to harvest. So I will go to the .NET Hub. What we call this is basically just the default tenant of .NET, but also is able to affect other tenants. By the way, as you can see, we have improved the multi-tenancy page as well. There is some paging, so we don't get all the tenants at once. By the way, I could also log in to any of these tenants. On the tenant edit page, we have this login as super user button that lets you log in. This is just for a fail-safe if anything happens and we have to intervene manually. And still on this tenant, on the multi-tenancy page, we have this maintenance tab where we can manually run maintenances if this is the need. So let's run this maintenance quickly. Maintenances can have a name, can have a priority. Well, it's obvious that maintenances with a higher priority will be run before maintenances with a lower priority. There's also a batch size, because maintenances are run in a batch, in batches and parallel, actually from background tasks. So this now is being picked up by a background task and will hopefully run for all of the 30 tenants in this local test instance. I will refresh the page and see if it's done yet. If it's not totally done yet, you can see there, at the moment nothing is done. This is probably a bit misleading because this progress indicator is only updated if the current batch is fully done. So we have a batch of 10, 30 tenants. Basically, this progress indicator will be only updated once all the 31 tenants are done, because we have 5 threads concurrently doing the maintenances. Let's refresh again. And now it's 100% done. So if we go back, we should see that indeed the name of the site is changed. So that's how we can efficiently and effectively maintain all the tenants without manual intervention. But this is not enough for a seamless experience. We should really have no downtime deployments as well when we upgrade Orchard. Okay. Out. The stage is yours.
Yeah, so like Zoltan said, I'm going to talk about how we manage our deployment processes. And when we began working on it like 1.5 years ago, we had basically 3 goals. One of them is high abstraction, because we want to make sure that all the little tasks that are related to our deployment processes are done automatically. So we just have to create high-level tasks that actually do a lot of things, but we can configure them as much as we like. The second goal is low interaction, because we don't want to do a lot of things by hand. We just want to push a button. Actually, I'm going to show you how it's done. We just push a button, and then a lot of different things are going to happen, but they are well configured. So we are well aware of what's happening. We configure this stuff, but we don't need to care about them all the time. We just hit the button, and then some magic is going to happen. And the most important thing is zero downtime, because we have a lot of interesting stuff going on in the Lombik hosting suite. But you know, if you can't access the websites, then it doesn't really matter that much. So what we achieved is basically even if we are upgrading from Orchard 1.7 to Orchard 1.8, which we have done recently for all our websites and .NET, we had zero downtime. All that happened is basically just 50 seconds page load time for the first time. And then after that, everything is up and running in Orchard 1.8. So I'm going to give you some historical overview, what we have done so far in the past time. So our first Orchard project with Zoltan is the Hungarian community site for Orchard. We started it in the end of 2011. We had one repository with Orchard 1.3, I think. We had only one tenant. It is the Hungarian Orchard blog, and it had an SQL-C database in the repository. So quite cool. Deployment was not really something that is concurrent with what I said earlier. So we just went to Visual Studio, right-click, publish web project, and use the publish profile to push it to the hosting service. And actually, what we done also is create the zip package and then upload it in FTP. So it's not really that cool. And actually, we were testing it for a long time on a free hosting service that was provided by a Hungarian company, but that service is closed since. But it was really great because it allowed ASP.NET developers to test their websites. But unfortunately, it's closed. So then we moved on a little bit. In 2012, we deployed orchardproject.hu for the first time to a virtual machine. And then we started looking towards multi-tenancy because we started an English blog. So until that time, we were publishing content in Hungarian. So we wanted to grow the Hungarian Orchard community. But we also recognized that there are a lot of stuff that are interesting for anyone. Basically, everything was interesting for anyone. So we started blogging in English too. So that's how we started with multi-tenancy. And we're going to, and you just saw how far we got since. That's when we got a little better at how we are managing our resources. We started to use sub-repos for the themes and modules, and we started using some batch scripts. So that's how we switched between production and development environments using orchard.exe. And so we were just running a list of commands against orchard.exe, and they were switching between dev and prod environments. Basically, after deployment, we just ran those commands. And when we were working on our machines, we, for example, disabled the combinator module, maybe enable shape tracing, but we made sure that after deployment, we always disabled the shape tracing. So there are different requirements on those environments. And at the time, we migrated our databases to SQL Azure because it's great, and it made sense to run the databases with SQL Azure. And then we started making database backups daily or regularly, weekly maybe, as a SQL script. So it's not that great. Again, we pushed it just into the repository to make sure that we have some backup of the data we have. And then after the first harvest in 2012, we created Orchard Dojo. So that's another tenant we added, and we moved to an Azure VM. And it was a great decision. We had great control over what we are doing with our applications in IIS and stuff. So that's why we moved to an Azure VM. And we started to play with deployment. So not just right-click publish and then let's see what happens. We started to fiddle around what's happening actually before, after, and during the deployment processes. And a very interesting thing, what we did is basically we had two applications running on that Azure VM in IIS. One of them was Lombic 1, the other one was Lombic 2. And what we did is basically the stage publishing feature, what we have for a long time in Azure Cloud Services, and it was recently added to Azure Websites too. We basically did the same thing with an Azure VM. We had two applications. One of them was always the staging application. The other one was always the production application. And the process of deciding which one is which and what to do with them was done by remotely executed PowerShell scripts. And when we deployed our application to the staging site, we tested that it's working okay, everything's in place and stuff, database is all right. And then we had another PowerShell script that actually swapped the two applications. So that's basically almost the same as what happens now with Azure Websites. The bindings were changed. So after swapping, the requests hit the other website. That was the new production website. During that swap, we also did DB and media replacement. After deployment, because we wanted to make sure that we have the latest data. So after deploying, we replaced the staging database with the production one and the staging media folder with the production one. So we had the latest data and the latest whatever files, pictures in the media for the staging side. And then in the April of 2013, we started to we created a new tenant for our website because not long after that, our company was founded. So we had to, level up and gear up for new challenges. And we wanted to enhance our deployment process. That's why we started to look for a good tool for continuous integration and delivery, and we choose TeamCity for that. We enhanced basically all of our PowerShell scripts to be compatible with TeamCity and to execute them from TeamCity. We still were using some PowerShell remoting, and that's when we separated in Azure the staging and the production databases, and then we moved to Azure websites. So and we were pretty lucky because actually at first it was a downgrade for us because we had basically stage publishing in our Azure virtual machine, but then we moved to Azure websites where there was no stage publishing, and then I don't know, like 2 weeks later, stage publishing was introduced to Azure, so Azure websites. So we were really lucky. And actually, it's funny that when we wanted to upgrade our PowerShell scripts so that they are, for example, capable of calling to Azure the command for swapping the stage and production website, actually that was the time when the PowerShell Azure SDK was released with a new version that contained that command. So we were really lucky with that. So we started using stage publishing with Azure websites. We upgraded TeamCity to a new version, which added a lot of cool features that enabled us to create well-structured projects and to manage them easily. And we enhanced our PowerShell scripts according to that. And another cool thing we added to our deployment process is deployment events. So basically what it means is that upon, for example, deploying to staging or creating a DB replace or creating a DB backup, we could run arbitrary commands on the given website when we wanted to. For example, we could run commands after publishing to the staging website because we wanted to, for example, enable the combinator module or disable any feature. And the tool for that was the recipe remote executor module, which was mentioned by Zoltan earlier. It allows you to send recipes to an API endpoint, and then it's going to be executed per tenant. So you can define what kind of recipe should be executed in what tenant. And we just added a few PowerShell scripts to this module. You can check it out because it's open source. It's in the client folder. So basically, what you can do with it is create a composite recipe. That's the name we gave it, and it basically a recipe collection, but for each tenant. So it adds a new level to the recipe, which is the tenant, and you can basically manage recipes for more tenants in one file. You just pass it to the recipe remote executor script, and it's going to be sent to your application, and the given recipes will be executed on the given tenants. So our toolkit so far consists of multiple things. Of course, we are heavily relying on Microsoft Azure. It's Microsoft Azure now, not Windows Azure. We are using, of course, virtual machines because our TeamCity instance is running on a virtual machine. Our applications are running on Azure websites. We use Azure SQL for the databases and blob storage for storing files. Like I said, our continuous integration software, what we use is TeamCity. We have a few PowerShell scripts. We use MS Build for actually executing the deployment using a publish profile, and we run tests with NUnit. But that's also handled by TeamCity, so it's very easy to set up. And of course, the Lombic hosting suite is a crucial part of .NET, but we actually added it to our other website. Before that, for example, our blogs and company websites were using the recipe remote executor. Now all our websites are using the maintenance feature provided by the Lombic hosting suite. So this is an overview how a project looks like. I don't know how visible it is from the back, but basically there are 5 important steps for one project, and there is one that is common for each of them. So basically, what happens is that before almost all of the deployment steps, another deployment step will run that will upgrade all the PowerShell scripts. So if we push some changes to the repository where we store them, they are going to be updated. So let's see what kind of steps we have during deployment. First of all, the most easy one to set up and manage is pooling your code and then building it. And it's basically handled by TeamCity almost automatically, because since 8.05 version, there is a feature that when you connect your project to a repository, it will look for example, Visual Studio solution files. And then we'll ask you, hey, do you want to build that solution? Do you want to build that solution? So you just pick one or more, and then they are going to be built. So it's really cool, automated. Before that, you just had to configure an MS build step. That was really easy. Now it's more, and it's even more easy. After building the solution, we run the NUnit tests. So if it's all green, then we're all right. We also have build parameters configured in TeamCity for each of our projects. And that means that we have some, basically it's a key value storage, where you can define a key, which is the name of a configuration parameter, and there's a value which you can define at the top level or any project level, but you can run any custom build if you want to change that temporarily. And a good example for that is how we do remote debugging. So it involves 3 steps. So you can, for example, debug your staging application. One of them is to run a custom build in TeamCity, where you define a configuration parameter that will tell the Visual Studio builder that this application needs to be targeted to debug mode. And then you deploy it in debug mode, and then you go to the Azure Management Portal and enable remote debugging, and you're done, basically. And then it's all up to Visual Studio. Actually, with the version 2013, it's really easy to connect to an Azure website and do remote debugging. So it's really awesome if you have any problem in the staging website, or you want to do testing. This is how it's basically done, and it's very easy to set up. OK, so deploy. That's how it looks like. We have a few build steps. Sorry. There are a few small PowerShell scripts that are going to be executed. For example, sending a warm-up request to the website and then stopping the staging website. Then we run MS build for deploying, and then we restart the staging website slot, send a warm-up request, and then we run the staging after deployed maintenance. So like we mentioned earlier, we can run arbitrary code there because now it's powered by the hosting suite, the maintenance feature. So we can have any arbitrary code to run against our websites if we want to do some upgrade, for example. One good example was that when we were using the WanderText branch and there was a bug with the info set storage, we wrote a maintenance that would fix it, and it ran for all the tenants, and then the info set entries were fixed. And it basically took, I don't know, a few minutes to copy-paste Sebastian's code from the controller, and it took like, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes to execute after deployment. After deployment, we want to make sure that we have all the latest data in our database. And like I said, we have a separate database for the staging and the production environments. But if we want to use the latest data for testing, we need to get the latest data from the production database. And that's basically another step we can do with only one click inside TeamCity. And that's going to run a PowerShell script that will connect to the Azure database server, delete the staging database, and then copy over the production database. So we have the latest data, and then we can test the application in the staging environment as much as we'd like. And now, here comes the really delicate process of swapping the website slots. Because let's say we deployed our application, tested it, everything's all right, but then we want to push it to production. And we need to be really careful with this, or actually not anymore, because it's another click of a button. So, but we always look closely at the logs to make sure that everything's all right. But this is just another button click, and then a few minutes, and then like 2 minutes later it's done. But there's a lot of magic happening inside, because by default, if you call to the Azure website to swap your staging and production slots, it doesn't necessarily doing what you actually need, like in our case. Because when you swap your staging and production slots, the connection strings and the app settings are going to remain the same. So this is a problem because we want to make sure that the staging site is always connecting to the staging database, and the production site is always connecting to the production database. But in this case, the virtual IPs are going to be swapped, so they're going to be crossed over, and then that would be a problem, because if we did some changes in the staging database that is not suitable for the production code, then we have a problem. And we obviously don't want to push testing data, but what we did in the staging environment to production. And I'm going to show you how you do that in just a second. In order to make sure that swapping works and it won't cause any problem, we always make sure that our changes in the code are backwards compatible, at least for one version, because that way, for example, we don't delete databases and columns, so we don't introduce breaking changes between neighboring versions. And that is because that way we can swap back the production and the staging environment. We can swap back as a disaster plan. So obviously, we won't swap to production if something's wrong in staging, but so softwares are behaving sometimes inconsistently. So it's entirely possible that everything's all right in staging, but then we swap it to production, and then bad things happen. So actually, we never had to do that because we were really careful with this stuff, but we have a backup plan. So we can just swap back, and then everything's back in normal. We can just retest and then see what happened. So this is a screenshot from the configuration page of the .nest website. It's actually the staging website. And this is the app settings. The connection string section is looking pretty similar. And you can notice a pattern here. For example, let's see, .NET hosting tenant analytics enabled. So there's nothing after analytics enabled. We also have another entry that analytics enabled.live, and we have some other somewhere which ends with .staging. Now, our configuration is the following. Each of the websites, so the production and the live slots, are always using the one that has no ending, so just ending with analytics is enabled. But we store the values for the different environments, staging and production, in the .live and .staging ones. And when we are swapping the applications, what happens before swapping is that we update all the connection strings and app settings of the staging slot so that it uses the live connection strings and app settings, and then it will be immediately swapped. So this means that upon swapping, the new live website, which was the old production site, is connecting to the live database and blob storage and things like that. And then we do the same thing for the live site. We update it. The old live site, which is the new staging, is also updated so that it uses the staging resources. But like I said, it's not automatically done when you are swapping in Azure website. So we had to do it manually or actually by a PowerShell script. And another cool thing is demonstrating how good this process is working is that we pushed the hotfix on Monday to .nest, and it was actually swapped out. So if you look at the date, it's going to say, I don't know, it's like 21 hours, 21 o'clock, or something like that, which is around noon because it's a 9-hour time zone difference between Hungary and Seattle. So we pushed some fixes during one of these presentations on Monday. We didn't need to worry about it because we just deployed and then saw that it's staging, it's all right, and just swapped it. We actually did another swap today too. So it's working great. And we're also testing in production. Now we're testing in staging first, don't worry. We also have backup too. So we do a daily backup of the databases, of the production database that is executed from TeamCity. And basically it's a very small script, like, I don't know, 50 lines of code with checks and comments and things like that. So it's very small. The product is going to be a file in a called backpack format. And actually, just like NuGet packages, the backpack format is also a zip file that contains all the folders that are corresponding to the tables in your database. And then each folder is containing a file, by the way, which is the JSON formatted content of your table. and then we just push it to the repository. And now the question may arise, why are we not using Azure Backup? Well, we did this backup process. We developed this backup process before the backup feature to Azure was introduced, and we are still using it because it works. That's it. And we want to make sure that when Orchard developers are doing their work and delivering products to their clients, just like we do, they can focus on their work. So that's why we would like to create a really friendly environment for Orchard developers where they need to worry about writing their code, and then everything else is handled. So, for example, the client doesn't need to worry about if the hosting service is okay, does it have the correct uptime. The developer doesn't need to worry about the deployment process, because that's a whole new set of things that developers need to learn when they are delivering products. So that's why we would like to create an Azure-based service, a platform as a service for Orchard that would help developers deliver their work to the clients much more reliably. And that would be part of so part of it would be a portable package for this complete setup of deployment, because we have experienced a lot, we have learned a lot about deployment. We want to create a package that is really portable and is usable by anyone. And like I said, we would like to integrate this service into Azure. Possibly it could be an add-on to Azure. Of course, the Lombic hosting suite is very crucial to all this service and all the functionalities we have done so far, because it gives us, for example, the maintenance and the multi-tenancy and the upgraded multi-tenancy features. And we would like to create this in a self-service manner. So it would be just like you register on Azure and then start using websites. We want to create the same experience. You just register and then click a few buttons, and then it's all set up and done for you. So all the tasks that we currently do automatically for now for our websites, we want to make sure that it's usable as a service to every Orchard developer. So that's it, and we are open for questions.
Any questions?
You said that. Will we have to adjust the way we develop our modules if we want them to work in this environment?
So this is regarding to the platform as a service.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically the plan is that you'll be able to connect your own repositories, for example, to this service. So yeah, you can run your own code, because the current plan is to use an Azure add-on, which will mean that you will have your own Azure account, you have your own Azure website. So it doesn't really matter what you affect, because it's your own stuff. So you develop your own modules, run your own code in your own environment. The add-on is about adding a lot of automatic features, so to make your life easier.
Supercharging the Orchard experience.
So you said for optimization, you're not the tenants aren't loaded if they're not active, if there have been no requests. So what's the load time for a tenant when it first gets the request? Because to me that was the problem. Of course, Orchard is incredibly fast now, but back in the old days that was an issue. And so did the tenants load pretty quick?
Yeah. So what was quite slow before with Orchard is the application startup time. What is with .NET, because we don't start all the tenants at once, it's just the vanilla Orchard startup time. So the startup time for tenants is just the shell startup time. So that's like creating the out-of-fact container, loading shell settings, whatnot. That's between 1 and 2 seconds in our production environment.
I'm just wondering, from the moment that the Team City build starts, how long does it take for the code to be deployed into the Azure website?
Yeah, it depends on the configuration, because you can either configure TeamCity to reclone the whole repository from the bottom up, or you can just do basically what updating does. And it depends on how many sub-repositories you have, how much code you have. I think on average deployment, for example, to our websites and blogs is like 10 minutes from ground to up. So it involves running some PowerShell scripts and running the maintenances and things like that.
Hours is about 55 minutes.
Yeah, so there's a place for improvement there.
For the software as a service feature you guys have, can you do custom module development for it, or is it pretty much just straight out of the box Orchard features that you can use?
Yeah, you can't do that there. So this is a constraint of multi-tenancy with Orchard. This is a multi-tenant setup, so no custom theme development, but we provide the media theme and the liquid templating feature, and no custom module development. That will be the main point of the platform as a service providing.
Thanks very much, guys.